let's call the meeting together
Give me a minute, didn't stick.
after a minute.
Now, we want to be clear.
Wrong button. I almost made a cup of coffee before I left, and then I forgot.
I'm sorry.
I should have.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah. Just to hold on to it.
I don't see it.
Yeah, I sent it.
Okay.
We'll give it about 15 minutes, and if we don't get any more, we'll
Turn the heat on. Open up the
Too
window.
obstinate to finally.
I was thinking, I don't think these windows are operable.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
How can you do this?
No,
They're not bullet.
How can you do
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, now let's, the gavel thing, I'm going to call to order the November 20th meeting of the Wasatch Grove Planning and Zoning Board and LPA. If we could have a roll call
Chair Lip,
here.
Vice Chair Crawford,
Here.
Board Member Corning is not here. Board Member Joyce,
Here.
alternate member Veronica Close,
Here.
alternate member Burns Guillaume. No.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, the motion is made by Mr. Joyce and seconded by Veronica. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye. Agenda is approved. Minutes from the August 14th minute and 14th. Any discussion on that?
Move approval.
Veronica moves for approval, seconded by
Second.
Chris Joyce. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving right along. I guess we're convening first as the regular portion of the planning and zoning meeting. There seems to be no old business, new business. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The item on the agenda tonight is changes to the town's code regarding wildlife in captivity in the town. The town council was made aware of the fact that some of the language in its code might be in violation of state statutes and even the Constitution, I guess, on the topic of wildlife in the town. And as a result of that, they asked Attorney Cirillo to look into the matter, and he was forwarded a memo from the Assistant General Counsel to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and she made several points in that memo. The first set of points that she made were things that local governments can have in their codes, and the second was a list of things that cannot be in the code. Items that can be in the code are the town can establish a residential use only zoning district which can in effect prohibit certain kinds of class 1 wildlife. They can regulate the abatement of public nuisances provided that the ordinance does not distinguish between nuisances from animals and other sources. And they can, the town can control structural requirements of buildings, including structures built for wildlife habitats. And they can also regulate commercial activity provided that wildlife is not discriminated against by the legislation. items that the town cannot do is prohibit the possession, breeding, or sale of captive wildlife. Cannot establish zoning classifications which expressly regulate or prohibit the possession of wildlife. They cannot regulate in the area of taking, possession, transportation, or use of wildlife, even if the ordinance is more restrictive than the state's regulations. And finally, local governments that create their own captive wildlife permitting and regulatory system are in conflict with Article 4, Section 9 of the Florida Constitution. So based on the results of that memorandum, the council directed Mike Cirillo to make changes to the ULDC, Unified Land Development Code, to ensure that we are not violating any state statutes or codes. So, as a result of that, staff went through the ULDC in great detail and identified several sections of the code that either needed to be revised or deleted. And the proposed deletions or revisions start on page 10 of your agenda. We revised the definition in the code of wildlife pets to refer specifically to certain Florida statutes and administrative code sections that address that issue. And under section 2010 of the code, general provisions, we've deleted section B1F, wildlife pets. 10 wildlife pets are permitted on properties of 5 acres or greater, provided that the wildlife pets are permitted and licensed by the state of Florida. We've just stricken that from the code. And we also made revisions to the permitted use sections of several of the zoning districts. Section 20-15, under the agricultural residential district, under the use of aviculture, rather than saying permitted subject to Article 80. Article 80 is our conditional use section, and we've essentially stricken that entire section from the code, and we're just referencing the state statutes, so to make sure that we're consistent. We've done that in 20-15, which is the AR district, and we've done that in 25-15, which is the commercial law and commercial law office districts. And also 40-015, which is the conservation zoning district. And then, as I mentioned earlier, section 80-045 is a conditional use section of our code that specifically regulates the exhibition of Class 1 and 2 wildlife, and we have stricken that entire section of the code. And based on those changes, it's Attorney Cirillo's opinion that we are now consistent with the state statutes, administrative code, and the Constitution. So on that basis, staff recommends approval of the changes proposed.
Okay, let the record show that Board Member Corning has arrived. Okay, thank you, Jim. One thing I would appreciate is that in the staff report, if you would have included what you just said about, the things that were permitted, and that would have been nice. If you could send me a copy of that so I can have it on my record.
Sure.
Probably the whole board members, so we have that. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Anyone need to discuss? Veronica, start with you.
I'm trying to figure out whether, Jim, is it your understanding that we cannot regulate people who want to have wildlife on their property?
We have to leave the regulation essentially up to the state. Now, we can continue to do the items that the general counsel mentioned in her memo, like, for example, if we had a residential zoning district in the town and we wanted to prohibit wildlife in their entirety from that zoning district, we could do that.
Okay, so since we're almost entirely residential, so we can still regulate wildlife possession in our town.
I don't think that we can. I think the state statutes sets up a very strict set of regulations that you have to follow, and if you meet those regulations, you can have wildlife.
But I thought you just said that except in you can regulate it in residential areas.
Well, if we passed in our agricultural residential district in its entirety, if we said no wildlife, I believe that would be okay.
Well, we could say whatever we wanted. We could say some wildlife or wildlife under certain circumstances or something like that.
Well,
As long as it applies to the entire district. I mean, I don't think there's anything that says it has to be all or nothing. I believe we have the right to zone wildlife, let's put it that way, in residential areas. And I
think we can.
okay, so however we zone it, we can say limited, class 1 or class 2, whatever it is, but it has to apply to the entire district.
This here said, memo says that we can establish residential use only zoning, in which we can, in effect, prohibit certain kinds of class 1 wildlife.
Okay. So we don't have to allow it everywhere.
No, we don't have to.
Okay. Now, as far as exhibitions, the state regulates how you exhibit, who can touch the animal, how you feed it, everything else. But the state doesn't regulate whether or not you can exhibit in a certain zone. Is that correct? And let me just give you an example. I'm sure elephants aren't allowed in West Palm Beach to be exhibited. I mean, just in general. I mean, obviously, if it's a traveling circus, they would be, but I don't think they are. In which case, I think we can regulate where and during what hours class 1, class 2 can be exhibited. We can't regulate how they're exhibited and all the rules surrounding that. I'm posing that to you. What do you think?
Well, what do you mean by exhibiting?
Well, for example,
are you talking about like a special event? Or having wildlife on your property properly caged, fed, and maintained? Is that exhibiting?
No. I think the state defines exhibiting. It's defined in the state, exhibiting, and what are the requirements? If you want to exhibit, what rules do you have to follow? But I don't think they take away the ability of a local community to decide where something can be exhibited, where what do they call it, a group of lions?
Right.
Where a pride of lions can be exhibited. I mean, if I'm a wildlife game preserve, can I bring those lions to a residential area in West Palm Beach to be exhibited? I don't think you can. unless the city allows it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can establish residential use only, which would exclude class 1 wildlife, the lions of class 1.
And I think that includes exhibiting them as well, not just owning them, but exhibiting them as well.
So you're saying bringing them in from somewhere else and exhibiting them for a day or something?
And I think, yeah, that's, would be an example that I would think, and I would think the town could regulate that. We can't regulate how they're to be exhibited, what you have to feed them, who they can touch, how they have to be controlled. We can't regulate anything the state regulates. And I don't think the state regulates what hours they can be exhibited and the location where they can be exhibited, other than if they're traveling. Sure. That's just my feeling. In which case, I'm a little concerned about the changes that are being proposed. That's all I have for now.
Jim, I went through the state statutes today along with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And there were some other things in the state statute that were not part of this. When you go to the state statute under classification of wildlife, which is statute 379.303, it says that the commission shall define class 1, class 2, and class 3, which it doesn't anywhere in the statute. You kind of have to go then to the website of the,
Yeah, it's in the administrative code.
I couldn't find it, but I believe you.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through the whole thing and I couldn't find it.
That's the section that we have referenced in each of the zoning districts.
Well, anyhow, it does talk about how you get the permits and specifically, you know, the size of the lots that you're allowed to have and minimums and maximums and buffers and the types of cages that they have to be placed in and different ages that the animals can be and all of that kind of stuff is in here. It doesn't really talk about birds when I was going through all of this. And you kind of struck that completely from our permitted uses. And I just wondered, just starting with that one, why? It says C note 1 below. Is that because you don't want to have them in agricultural residential at all?
No, no, because that's referencing the administrative code where they're regulated.
But they're not regulated. Underneath this section, when you go back, they're not listed under a class 1.
Well,
The birds are like exempt.
No, I think
No.
there's a separate.
No.
Because
Here it-
statute for ADA.
There's a list of animals that are class 1.
Right,
There's a list of animals that are class 2.
right,
And class 3 are defined as all other wildlife not listed herein, except those for which a permit is not required.
right, and then
are
the
class 3.
exemptions are, and it lists all of these different types of birds, which are parrots, and, well, it also includes prairie dogs, rabbits, rats, mice, doves, finches, gerbils, guinea pigs, hamsters, cockatiels, doves, ferrets. They're all exempt.
Yeah, no permit is required.
Right. I don't know, I tend to agree with Veronica. I think that we can definitely be more restrictive where it comes to things that are not in conflict with the state regulations. I don't think that, prohibiting lions and tigers and bears in a residential zoning district isn't something that's out of the ordinary. I don't think there's anywhere in most of your residential neighborhoods where you're going to be able to get a class 1 permit. I don't think you can get that in a residential zoning district, in a residential land use or zoning area. But when you go for the exhibition where it's section 80-045 and you've just gotten rid of all of that, I don't think that's, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If there are things in here that are in conflict with the state regulations, that's one thing. But there are things here, no wildlife exhibition license may be issued for a location that is within 1,000 feet of another. There is some information in here that talks about distance requirements from one to another. And if we're consistent with the state regulation, there's nothing wrong with it being in here. The fact that we don't want signage, that's okay. That has nothing to do with the state regulatory body saying you can or you cannot do this. If you don't want to have a sign in your community advertising that, that's okay. But there's nothing in the state regulations that says you have to. Moving on, having a 501c3 nonprofit status, it specifically states in the state regulations you cannot be a personal owner if you're going to exhibit. You have to be a corporation or something else. There are things in here that I think we need to reconsider. Striking the whole entire thing out gives us absolutely no control. They will never come to us for a permit, and these things could be popping up all over the place and we would have no knowledge of them. Except for, the roars that you'll hear in the community. And I don't necessarily, the state governs, adult entertainment, they govern, alcohol sales and all number of things. And you can't be less regulatory, but you can certainly be more regulatory as long as you're not infringing on, these folks' constitutional rights, which I don't think there are things that are in here. If we are, of course, we would want to remove them, but I don't believe that there are things in here that pertain to adequate setbacks and life safety issues that we're crossing out and just getting rid of. I don't think that's such a good idea.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might add, one of your statements here on page 5 is the exhibition of wildlife pets is preempted by state law. I don't fully agree with that. I think there are some elements of the exhibition of wildlife pets that are preempted by state law. And I think a better statement there might be something that says state statute preempts whatever's in our code. But as I said before, I think there are some elements that we could still regulate that are not preempted by state statute.
Yeah.
So maybe it'd be a good idea to take a closer look and see if we can get a little more information. We're faced with it here because this is a good place to do that kind of thing. So I think we have to be careful about how we proceed. When you're talking about 60 by 100 lots, no, it's not that big a deal, but here we could be more affected by anything we do in this area.
Well, I think when the attorney's interpretation of the memorandum from the general counsel was that by having the conditional use section regarding wildlife, that we were establishing zoning classifications which expressly regulate or prohibit the possession of wildlife. And that's why he suggested that we strike that section.
So maybe we just have to rewrite some
So
of
maybe
our
it's not a
code.
special use.
Yeah, right.
Maybe it's
right.
not a conditional use. Maybe there are other things.
Yeah, maybe it's just either allowed or not allowed, or we classify what is or what isn't. I can use the example of West Palm Beach. They don't allow this in residential areas.
No, I don't think they'll, as someone who, did zoning for 9 years, you couldn't even have a chicken in the city of West Palm Beach, let alone wildlife.
Well, that's okay.
And that was in an industrial or commercial or residential or anywhere. It didn't matter the zoning, it just wasn't allowed.
Yeah. Well, this here says, local governments may establish residential use only zoning which can in effect prohibit certain kinds of class one wildlife. So if we wanted to prohibit it in the entire AR district, it sounds like we could do that.
I'm not sure if it's all.
That's another throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Well,
Yeah, right.
yeah, I'm sure it is, but I mean, we were directed to take out all references to regulating wildlife.
Yeah,
As a resident, I'm not comfortable with that
Yeah.
at all.
Because I think that as long as what, you're not in conflict with what they're regulating, I mean, that's traditionally the way the state statutes work. I mean, without having read what, you know, the memo that you received back.
Yeah, well, we can regulate the abatement of public nuisances. We can control structural requirements. And we can regulate commercial activity provided that captive wildlife is not discriminated by the legislation.
Well, what does that, I mean, commercial activity, what does that mean? Hours of operation, you know, does that mean parking requirements? Does that mean signage? Does that mean lighting? Does that, I mean, what does that entail?
It's,
You're not, by doing all that, you're not affecting the animals.
it's all of those, as long as you don't single out wildlife specifically. It's regulations that would pertain to all commercial businesses.
And we do that.
We do that.
We do that. I mean, it's site planning. You're just, you know, as you would any other commercial
Yeah,
type.
it doesn't say,
use.
it doesn't, I mean, we aren't taking out the requirement that they have a site plan.
No, but I think similarly to any other type of use, Jim, I mean, and again, maybe it's just because it was under a special use requirement, that may have thrown up the red flag, but I do think that there needs to be standards, similarly to any other type of, site plan review.
But my understanding is the standards have to apply to everybody. So if you say no signage, that's everybody.
No,
You can't say wildlife can't have signs. It's clear on that.
no, I don't agree with that. I
Okay,
don't
but
agree
that's
with that
what they're saying.
interpretation. I don't
You
think
can't
that's what they're
single out
saying.
wildlife or exclude it.
They don't regulate signage, do they?
Well,
No.
no, I was using, we have that in here, no signage for wildlife. That's in here, they took it out. That was something somebody brought up.
Yeah,
We can't do that.
I don't agree with that interpretation.
No.
I don't,
But
because,
it's clear, they say you can't single out wildlife with your restrictions.
I would,
Think of an example then of what you could do to wildlife that would not be restricted.
yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that interpretation. Because, and I'm not, you know, trying to say that I know more or, you know, but traditionally speaking, and I don't know if, you know, because they're animals and they have a different, you know, standard than any other state regulatory agency that comes into place or rule or regulation, but traditionally speaking, municipalities can be more restrictive than, you know, the state regulations. And I think as it relates to the animals themselves, if you're not saying you can't bring the animals, you know, specific animals in, as long as you're not regulating the type of animal in the class 1 or class 2, if you're not saying, well, this one can and this one can't and this one can, you know, as long as you're not changing any of that, I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to say, okay, we want an 8-foot high fence, and we want to have this type of buffer, and we want to, you know, because you have life safety issues as it pertains to these types of uses.
Yes, but I think those are addressed by the state.
Those are addressed.
Those
Yeah,
are addressed
I
by the
mean-
state. And I think what they're saying in the case of how you manage the wildlife permit, they're very specific about what kind of structure they have to be in, what kind of fencing they have to have.
But you're saying you can talk to the structure.
Well, that's what it says.
Yes.
So you can have setbacks, but setbacks have to pertain to everybody.
Yeah.
Right, right. For example, if the structure required to house a particular type of animal has to be at least 20 feet tall, and we don't allow 20 feet tall structures in the district, they're not allowed to have it. That's my understanding of it.
Is that?
I would say that that's true.
I think we need some more information.
Yeah.
But that sounds accurate because it's for everybody. It's not
Right, right,
exclusive.
right. If we don't allow 8-foot fences,
If you allow 20-foot higher buildings for everybody but wildlife, then you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The same with the signage.
Well, I think part of the thing that we have to realize here is that being on the CERT team and search and rescue, and you know, come upon a structure that's got something in there that'll eat you, you know, I would, you know, I think that, that
That's not the kind of signage
man-eating
I meant.
animals do require
That's not the kind of sign I meant.
some signage.
And, you know, generally you come upon a man
Watch
eating
your
animal,
ass.
you'll know. Yeah, that's not what I meant.
You can read this.
I mean, I think, for example, that the town has the right to regulate whether someone on an acre can invite somebody who exhibits 2 elephants onto their property for 2 days to have a party. I think we're allowed to regulate that.
Well, I think that, that would certainly require special event permit. And we can regulate it through that.
Yeah, I think, Jim, we have a public comment here. If you could get us that information that we didn't have, and maybe if we could, is this something that we have to get done before the end of the year, so we can bring it back?
Well, the council's been waiting on this for a while, so they would like to see it as soon as possible.
So as soon as possible next year.
Yeah, I don't think we should, I mean, I
Yeah.
appreciate their situation, but I don't think we should rush through this without thinking through, having all the information.
Okay, well, if you're gonna bring it back, what specifically?
That letter, number 1, I think,
Okay,
would be
the,
helpful.
The general counsel's letter, okay.
Anything you can find, any legal, any case law you can find on it, or, you know, I mean, search all the case law, but anything that addresses this particular
Yeah,
situation.
there's several case law references in the memo, so.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that would be.
That would be helpful. Todd?
Tom McClendon, D Road. I think there's some confusion here where, and this happens quite often, the Wasatchie Grows, and I say Wasatchie Grows, but including maybe you all's opinion, is that you guys can regulate anything in Wasatchie Grows. Wasatchie Grows doesn't have authority to regulate anything it wants. The state has specifically given the authority to regulate wildlife to Fish and Wildlife Commission. And they didn't give that to Wasatchie Groves, they gave it to Fish and Wildlife Commission specifically to regulate wildlife. The only thing, from my understanding and based on case law, the town could prohibit certain class 1 wildlife, which would be a lion or a tiger, like you were stating, from a residential only zoning district. Do we have any residential only zoning districts in Wasatchie Groves?
We don't have any zoning districts that only allow residences. I mean, the AR district allows a multitude of uses.
Right. But it's not a commercial district.
Right.
It's not industrial, it's
Yeah.
not, it's not.
It's rural
But-
residential.
It's
I mean,
But it's-
residential.
It's more than an apartment building. An apartment building in downtown West Palm is residential only. No agriculture, nothing but residential.
It's residential, though. I mean, whether it's agricultural residential or multifamily residential, it's still residential.
Yeah, well, that's the way I would.
But that's only talking about certain class 1 wildlife. Anything that's class 2 or 3, and even some class 1, the town cannot prohibit that.
I'm sorry, but you gave your name and address, but are you a member of the Wildlife Commission or
No, just a resident.
just, okay.
And this is based on case law. So if you guys have no authority to regulate animals specifically, wildlife, whether it's a turtle in the canal or an alligator and that sort of thing. It's kind of like the gun law, how for years the state had the authority to regulate guns, and all these municipalities were enacting all these laws regulating guns. And the state finally stepped in and said, enough, you guys don't have the authority to do it, we do. And they finally started making it where they were gonna fine commission members that were enforcing these regulations, and all of a sudden, everybody panicked and took the regulations out. That's kind of the situation you're in right now.
Except for now, the state is leaning back to the municipalities saying, we're not gonna step in, we're not going to enforce or proceed until you get sign off from your municipality, so.
Right.
Maybe
They bounced it back.
Maybe you could provide the information that you have to.
Yeah, that would be
You can
helpful.
send it to us.
That would be very helpful.
I think he has it, Foley,
Great.
or Foley versus Orange County was a very recent one, and it lays it out pretty well in there, that the state is the one that has the.
And again, in the information that's in here, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of information, but there were certain things that popped out, and one of them was that it said a person, an individual could not, and I don't remember exactly where I saw that, could not get a permit for something. I'd have to go back through this, but
I
It
think you're
is-
missing a lot of, like he pointed out, there's a lot of administrative codes that aren't Florida statutes, and most of the regulations you'll find with Fish and Wildlife are in that.
yeah, I went to the Fish and Wildlife, but I was going by what was in the regulations based on what you were changing. The 37.9.3761.
Right, and you had mentioned that, you guys could regulate so much as it wasn't in conflict. Well, if Florida Fish and Wildlife says you have to have a 100-square-foot cage, per 100-pound tiger, let's say, and you guys wanted to have that duplicate in there, well, you could,
Yeah,
but for what? If the state's already doing it, why have the duplicate? It'd be like
I
putting
think
up your
it's
own
just-
speed limit sign that says 40 on a road, and the state has one that says 40 also. It's kind of pointless.
well, except for, and really this is inappropriate for us to be discussing this back and forth, I'm sorry, Lawrence, but I think that it brings some accountability back to the town, just so that we know what's going on in our community. That's all.
We've got a little out of hand here on this, so let me bring this, the board back to order, and please always speak when recognized. Lawrence, I believe you want to speak.
Yeah, I guess if Todd were to go through qualifications, he's had quite a bit of direct legal experience and exposure in these cases. Yeah. I have a question. In Wellington, they have one of these Class 1 operations. Have they made that now an exception? Or is that still allowed for other people? Do you know?
I'm not aware of that, but.
You know the one with the panthers, they have panthers and tigers and.
Yeah, well, I certainly assume that they have all the permits that they need to get from the state.
But do they have did they isolate that, like encapsulate, say you're the only one who can do it? Grandfathered in, or is that available to other people in that area?
I think the ability to apply for permits from the state probably are available in other locations, but I don't know.
Okay. Now, if this were ag res as it used to be, would that make it even more permissible, or wouldn't affect it at all?
It still is ag-res.
It still is ag res. I've heard people say that it's not ag res, that it's rural residential.
Well, the land use is rural residential, and the zoning is agricultural residential.
Okay. All right. So, I know there's a segment in the community that would like this, like Wellington, in an inexpensive Wellington, but they even have this available in Wellington. Although we don't know how extensive that is. I don't really understand comparisons to West Palm, about with regard to chickens or who knows what. I bet you could find chickens south of Belvedere though.
You probably
So, you know, when things advance to a certain point, then people naturally want to phase things out. I mean, my great uncle had a tiger in Palm Beach, but that was a long time ago. You know, there isn't that much land anymore, and that's just not the way it is. Now here, and there was also some discussion of, you know, having, you had a bunch of money so you could have great parties for your kids' birthday parties. So they did bring in stuff, and it got out of hand. So they had to make more rules. But I mean, Loxahatchee Groves has always been sort of an interesting and unusual place, and entertains a wide variety of people here that have interesting things. Now, I guess Tarzan didn't quite, his cages weren't what the state wanted. I mean, they don't want them wandering through your living room and stuff, so, I mean, if everything goes right, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't continue the kind of lifestyle that you have out here. I mean, this seems like a great move forward. I mean, I don't know I'm not sure what it is you're after to pin down. I mean, I don't think we should aspire to be West Palm. I don't think we should aspire to be Wellington. I think health and safety is a different matter. I mean, of course, you don't want a tiger running around and having, you know, the chief down, the sheriff down here, like last time.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting that we prohibit wildlife.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I think this is a great step forward. I mean, I think it's a massive shift back to what people wanted what we found when we got here. That's mine.
Robin, do you have any specific, any general comments, more specific comments on this? Need a motion on this, or just consensus to bring it back?
To bring back here,
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to see a motion, I guess.
Okay. So you can vote against bringing it back if that's, you know.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Okay, so,
I mean, I would like to actually, I have a question.
Lawrence, yeah.
What specifically, I don't understand exactly what is needed or what is missing or what is so crucial here. I mean, whether you could be on an acre and 3/4 and be as threatened as if you were on 10 or 20. I mean, I just need to, I think, what are we missing here?
Well,
What are you going to get for them?
yeah, well, I mean, I've been asked to supply the board members with the council, the assistant general counsel's memo, which was used by Mike Cirillo as the basis for directing us to do this work. Okay, and I'll supply that. And
What are the contents of that, or follow what the state guidelines are, or
Well,
are there other?
when I made my initial presentation, I went through a list of do's and don'ts, which I extracted from that memo.
And that was not sufficient.
Well, the members of the board hadn't seen it. I mean,
Okay.
when I went through it tonight, that's the first time they heard it, and they wanted to see the memorandum.
So the way I see it is that we didn't have all the information that staff had to give us this information.
So you
So
could
we're sitting
research
here
it.
trying to make a decision on something based on a take it or leave it proposition without having the basis by which the decisions were made. So to sit here at the meeting and now, you know, have all the information supplied to us, I don't have enough time to think about it. because it's, oh, well, this is what it said, and therefore you need to make this decision. And maybe the town council would do that, I'm not. So we would have a motion for, so Jim has covered.
I move to defer to next month, or as soon as you come back with information. And if I might add something, could you include the question about Wellington, check into that and see what's going on there?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it, so maybe it
Yeah,
might
yeah, I
shed
don't
some
either.
light on how.
All right, so you can make a motion and then include that in there. So motion's from Veronica Close,
Second.
seconded by Grace Jones. Any discussion from the board?
Yeah. It sounds reasonable that, for people to have everything to do the research, so.
All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, so we'll bring this back the next meeting, and Jim will supply us with the reports, and also if you can find out from Wellington what they're handling.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Let's see, are we adjourning now as the
Yeah.
LPA and reconvening as?
You're adjourning as P&Z.
And reconvening as the planning.
Is there a motion to adjourn, Chair?
Motion to adjourn the P&Z meeting, moved by Veronica Close, seconded by Rich Joyce, all in favor, all opposed, meeting's closed. Motion to, I guess we don't have a motion, we'll just open up the local planning agency meeting. And staff, there's no old business, new business.
Okay.
Could I
Which
start?
would be,
Yes.
what is this here, it's
If I could start this,
item 10.
Mr. Litt. As you're all aware, we've gone through a year plus litigation over a corner of Folsom Road and Okeechobee. And basically, it appears that we're ending up somewhere in the neighborhood of a .074 FAR. There's a concern amongst the elected officials that without some fairly swift action, at that .074 FAR could become a floodgate. And we've been working toward trying to contain that. And Mr. Fleischman's put into a lot of work based on the public meetings, workshops that occurred 2 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
Seems so much longer.
Sometime ago. So what we're trying to do is bring forward those concepts that were fleshed out and vetted several years ago, and try to move something forward as quickly as possible with the understanding and the knowledge that this may need to come back to the board at a future date, not too distant in the future. The issue being to get something under control before it gets out of the gate. With that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Okay. We have a brief one pager, page 18 of the agenda packet. We go background of history, going all the way back to the 2012 moratorium on land use plan amendments, which has since expired. The purpose of that was to take a look at non-residential land use along the Okeechobee Boulevard corridor. And we also had two workshops on the issue, one in 2011 and one in 2012. The one in 2011 was particularly useful because we had a large turnout. We had 56 residents actually sign in, and we estimated that there was at least another 20 more that didn't, so possibly around 70 attended that. We had good representation from both Okeechobee Boulevard residents and property owners and residents and property owners from other areas in the town. As you might expect, there was mixed views on what should occur on Okeechobee. The residents and property owners on Okeechobee were very much interested in being given some additional opportunities over and above what they currently had available in the AR zoning district. And residents and owners off the corridor were more interested in either no commercial development or keeping it down to a manageable amount and keep it to local neighborhood serving types of uses. Now, the proposed amendments that we have are, start on page 19, but we've also included a pretty extensive background package. The background package was a little difficult to put together because I had several specific requests for various pieces of information that I tried to include in the package. So what I did was I went back and everything that we have done on the corridor, I put in the backup package. So I'd like to spend most of the time tonight on the amendments themselves, but I can run through and give you just a few highlights. Yeah. I guess we just need to press the forward button now. Yeah, and, oops. Yeah, the background material I've included as attachment A, and it's pages 23 through 69 of our agenda package. For the purposes of our planning effort, we have defined the Okeechobee Boulevard corridor as all properties on the north side and the south side which have frontage on Okeechobee and extend to the rear of the fronting property line. Okay, the principal tools that we have available to us to regulate land use activities are the future land use and zoning maps, comprehensive plan policies, and the land development code, principally uses that are allowed in the various zoning districts and the intensity standards that each district has. This is the current future land use map of the town, and you can see the entire corridor along Okeechobee, with the exception of the elementary school, currently has a land use designation of rural residential 5.
Isn't the Red Barn already, that was grandfathered in, wasn't it?
It's grandfathered in under zoning designation of multiple use plan development. It had a commercial zoning land use designation in the county. On the town's plan, it doesn't show it. So there's an inconsistency between the zoning and the land use designation. The rural residential land use category essentially allows residential units at 1 unit per 5 acres, but it also allows public schools and limited institutional and public facilities and a variety of agricultural uses. This, yeah, that's okay. This table represents an inventory of the existing land uses on the corridor, and we compiled this inventory using the land use code assigned by the property appraiser. Wholesale nursery is far and away the largest existing use, although we do have a substantial amount of vacant parcels and institutional parcels. The institutional parcels consist of the public school, 7 churches, the daycare center, the fire station, and a fraternal organization.
What about the unbuilt daycare? Is that in that list there?
Yeah.
Yeah, kids.
Yeah.
Same with churches, unbuilt churches.
Yes. Now the principal tool that we have historically used to limit the intensity of development in our zoning districts is a floor area ratio. And the floor area ratio, as you all are well aware, is the total gross floor area of structures divided by the area of the parcel. If we have a 1 acre parcel, 43,560 square feet, if the FAR is 0.1, we would allow a structure of 4,356 square feet. There's been a lot of discussion at the council level about reducing the floor area ratios that are currently allowed in the plan as the principal method of reducing the amount of potential commercial that we can have along Okeechobee. There's been a lot of discussion that by simply reducing the FAR from 0.1 in the commercial district to 0.05 and making that a universal FAR along the corridor, that would solve the problem or greatly help in solving the problem. However, if we assume that the 0.05 FAR was applied to the 107 acres of vacant land that we currently have along the corridor, that would allow a potential of 233,046 square feet of commercial space to be built, simply by cutting the FAR in half and only applying that to the vacant parcels. If we applied that also to the 190 acres of commercial nurseries, if the nurseries decided they wanted to convert to residential, the 0.05 FAR would also allow an additional 413,000 square feet of commercial. So it was the staff's opinion that by simply reducing the FARs is not the way to go. Reducing the FARs is part of the solution, but not the entire solution.
So for all 440-some acres, that's like 1 million square feet of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. If the church is converted, if the residential area is converted, if all uses along the corridor converted to, and we had 2 strips of commercial development, it would be well over 1 million square feet. Well over 1 million square feet. As part of the study of the FAR issue, the council asked us to take a look at the FARs of the existing land uses along the corridor. And wholesale nurseries ranged up to 0.03. Residential ranged up to 0.088. That's a surprising number, but the higher FARs were on the very small properties that are located out west on the north side of Okeechobee. Religious institutions also ranged up to 0.08. And the other institutional uses such as the fire station and fraternal organization ranged up to 0.05. We have one commercial use, that's the Red Barn, and that is currently at 0.165. So the two zoning categories that were the primary interest of our study were the commercial low and the commercial low office zoning districts. Oops. Okay, if you can look at my handwritten numbers on pages A26 and A27, that provides you with a list of the uses that are allowed in the commercial low and the commercial low office zoning districts. You can see that there are uses that they're listed as permitted subject to special exception, and we also have listed uses that are not permitted in those districts.
That's your handwritten number at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, that's a handwritten A26 and A27.
Okay, that'd be page 50 and 51 in the PDF.
And, okay, I want to go over just briefly the results of one of the workshops that we had. The first workshop, as I mentioned, was very well attended and had lively discussions. And we also handed out a survey asking the attendees their opinions on whether or not they wanted any commercial development on Okeechobee, and if they did, what types of uses that they would like to see. And I've got a memorandum summarizing the results of that workshop on handwritten page A-28. And if you look at page A-29, that's the results of the survey that was taken. We had 36 surveys from the workshop that were actually returned. And on those surveys, we had 14 respondents that indicate that they prefer no commercial on Okeechobee. We had 10 turn-in questionnaires that had checked yes to all of the listed commercial uses. And we had some, and we had 10 that indicated yes to some of their uses, but not all of them. And then we had a couple other answers that we really couldn't interpret much from. If we look at page A-30, that's the list of uses that we were asking people to respond to. And that list I created generally from small tenant uses that locate in shopping centers. Some of the discussion and some of the opinions that were generated at the workshop also were, and I'm just going to summarize a few of them. Permit small agricultural businesses only. There was quite a bit of concern about the increase in traffic caused by commercial uses. There was some concern about the increase in crime from commercial development. Some of the people favored 4-laning of Okeechobee. Some wanted to keep it at 2, so there was no real consensus on that issue. There was some interest in preparing a master plan for Okeechobee Boulevard. And there was considerable interest in the town trying to promote roundabouts and traffic lights on Okeechobee. Okay, now, we took the information that we gleaned from the workshops. We went through the comprehensive plan, looked at the comprehensive plan policies. We had discussions with the town council as a whole and discussions with them individually. And from all of those sources, we came up with 6 principles, guiding principles that staff used to put together the proposed future land use plan amendments. And the first was to implement a sector or corridor planning approach along Okeechobee Boulevard, discourage strict commercial and accumulation of vacant properties. And there was considerable interest in providing property owners with more opportunities for development than we currently have under the AR zoning district. Obviously, implement procedures to limit the intensity. That's where we're going to be getting into looking at the floor area ratios along the corridor. And also that if and when Okeechobee does become 4-laned, that is going to change the character of the corridor, and in the event that does take place, we'll need to take another look at the land use policies that we're proposing tonight. And also, we have an objective in the comprehensive plan that allows us to impose specific conditions on individual development approvals. And we think that that's an objective that can be used to limit and control development on individual properties, and also design them in a manner that is consistent with the policies of the comprehensive plan. So, okay, now I'd like to get into the policies that we're suggesting that the town adopt. Okay, can you go back one, Bill? Yeah. What we're proposing is to add an objective to the future land use element and 6 supportive policies. The objective is fairly general, and it is reflective of direction we got from the workshops, direction in the conference plan, and also discussions with the council. That's to encourage compatible town-serving uses by implementing sector planning principles to control the allocation, location, scale, and timing of development approvals. Now, the first policy that we're recommending is to support the maintenance of Okeechobee as a 2-lane segment. Following the direction of the workshops and the council, recommending that the town support implementing traffic control devices such as roundabouts and traffic signals at selected intersections, and continue to coordinate with the county to gain appropriate future roadway improvements. And then we also would do a comprehensive review of the Okeechobee Boulevard planning policies if and when improvements are actually programmed into the county's 5-year traffic improvement program. At this point, the widening of Okeechobee is not included in the county's 5-year plan.
I think you just got ahead.
Yeah.
I think it may have just got ahead.
Really? It wasn't on the one on that they, well, maybe because of Minto.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about widening it east
I
or
heard,
east.
rumor was.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the conditions of Minto, I believe, that when the timing is appropriate, to widen it east of E. So, this is where we start to get a little creative in our recommendations. We're suggesting that commercial development along the corridor be limited to 3 categories of commercial. The first is an activity center, second is a cottage industry, and the third is an individual small business. The characteristics that we're suggesting for an activity center, which is actually a node or a center of activity, and that it be located at an intersection. It consists either of solely commercial or a combination of commercial and other uses such as recreation, institutional, or civic uses, and that the commercial component be strictly oriented to serving the daily retail and service needs of the residents of the town. And the appropriate land use category for activity centers would be commercial low or commercial low office. Cottage industry is, we're recommending that cottage industry consists of either a home occupation or a residential enterprise, both of which are currently allowed in the agricultural residential zoning district. However, there are certain limitations in the current home occupation and residential enterprise requirements that we think should be loosened or lessened on the corridor. We are suggesting that home occupations and residential enterprises on the corridor be allowed to have a limited number of outside workers, and that customers be allowed to purchase or do business on site. We're recommending a very low 0.025 floor area ratio on these, and these can be done in the RR5 future land use category in AR zoning district. So these uses could be done without land use changes. The only changes, I guess, would be to the conditional use section of the ULDC, which restricts workers and clients. The third category is what we're calling an individual small business, and that's a single commercial or service use oriented to serving the residents of the town. Under the previous category of the cottage industry, homestead exemption is currently required. Under this category, a homestead exemption would not be required. And that these would require land use and zoning amendments to the commercial law or commercial law office with a maximum FAR of 0.05. Just to get into the requirements for an activity center, we're suggesting that the maximum size parcel would be 10 acres, that the tenants consist of multiple commercial or a combination of commercial, civic, cultural, or recreational uses. If an activity center consists solely of commercial businesses, the FAR will be 0.05. We have as a mixed use that it could be 0.10, but we're recommending that be reduced to 0.075. So you could exceed 0.05 if you had other uses such as civic, cultural, or recreational uses in development. Now, the next point is where we really got creative. We set a maximum allocation of activity center space along the corridor at 49,000 square feet, unless it's increased by the council in the future. Now, the way that we did that was that we calculated the build-out population of the town. That's assuming that every parcel that could have a home on it will have a home. And that results in a build-up population of 4,900 residents. And
An additional 4,900?
no, total.
Oh.
Total. And it's a generally accepted rule of thumb that residents can support 25 square feet per capita of shopping center space. Now the town does not have the population at build-outs to support major anchor tenants. So we took that 25 square feet per capita and extracted the amount of space that's normally occupied by major tenants. And that left us with 10 square feet per capita of local serving businesses. And since the objective is to provide only local serving businesses along the corridor, we applied the 10 square feet to the 4,900 and came up with a maximum activity center square footage of 49,000 square feet. That's the way that we're proposing to control retail commercial development along the corridor, as opposed to just limiting the FAR along the corridor to the 0.05, which could theoretically result in 600,000 square feet. And the future land use element objective 1.15 can be used to specifically impose additional conditions on the activity center. The individual small business performance standards, we're suggesting that in order for a business to be approved as an individual small business, that the traffic generation cannot exceed the insignificant traffic impact level on Okeechobee Boulevard. And we're also suggesting that it be allowed to include an accessory residential unit, either for the operator of the business or the owner of the business. And the square footage that would result in individual small business is not included in the 49,000 square feet activity center maximum. And finally, one of the goals of the council and discussions that occurred at the workshop was that we should try to prevent the accumulation of vacant commercial land uses along the corridor. So we're recommending that if an activity center or an individual small business is being proposed, that it be required to provide a market study justifying the need or the support for the proposed use, and that a master plan and a traffic performance standard review be required at the time of the land use application. And then again, objective 1.15 can be used to impose conditions of approval on those projects, and that we institute a sunset review of the master plan in effect, establishing a timeframe that if the next step in the process, site plan or building permits is not accomplished within a certain time period, which generally is a year, then we lose the approval of the master plan. So we only want projects to come in that are serious about development and developments that will occur as opposed to giving properties land use and zoning and incentive for years. And that's it.
Wow, that's a lot. If I may, Jim, just referring back to some of the large parcels that we have there, along the Trophy.
Ooh.
Oh, that's better. Let there be light.
That, probably nice.
Is there any interest, would you think there would be any interest in, like this big piece on the north side of Okeechobee from Folsom back down to the Portuguese American Club?
The one that's across from the Red Barn.
Across from the Day and the Red Barn. across.
Well, there has, the only interest that I've seen.
Let me just finish my thought. I saw that we really didn't have any idea there for possible residential. And when I'm looking at these big parcels like this, instead of a 1 unit per 5 acres, is maybe, break that down to make it more of a walkable, traditionally walkable community, and maybe, not, high density, but certainly higher density than 1 unit per 5. And therefore, since it's on a major road, it wouldn't empty onto Okeechobee. That whole development thing might empty onto Folsom.
Folsom, yeah.
And also all the other ones down, as you're going down the street, where something jumps out like that. Does that seem like something that would help to reduce the amount of commercial and increase the amount of residential for our town?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could happen. As a matter of fact, I know there has been at least one inquiry on that particular parcel about putting in townhouses, but we said that was not feasible at this time. I think that's a good idea. I think we should look at residential development along the corridor. My thought on that was trying to take it one step at a time. I didn't really want to get into increases in residential density and commercial development at the same time. Maybe we should. I mean, you're absolutely right. If some of those parcels were allowed to go to higher densities, maybe 1 to 2.5, 1 to 2.5 was suggested, and seemed like the council would accept it when it was proposed as part of the multiple use plan development where the college is now. They had a previous look at that parcel. Part of that was 1 to 2.5. Council seemed okay with that. Any higher than that, I don't know.
Okay, I just wanted to, can we bring it back to board, Lawrence?
I think that would be anathema. I think that brings suburbia straight into the center. And if there are gonna be no chicken voters, they're gonna be located in that republic. And
Good point.
I can see it on Southern. I mean, if you were to soften that typical sprawl thing with something that had apartments above it and more of and you could reform it into a village type with stuff above it. I mean, you're already down the tubes with it anyway, so I think that would soften it. And since Calvin Giordano, I've been begging, throwing myself on the floor, praying for transfer development rights, for sending sites and receiving sites, and paying the people on Okeechobee whatever you view is their fair share, and send it down to Southern, instead of having the developers come in and say, what do you want, guys? Here you go. You know, it's allowed. But if they bought development rights to get them where you wanted them to go, everybody would get what they need, and then you could have things that are more agricultural town serving or rural. I think the biggest thing that we're striving for is a variety of choice of where you want to live in Palm Beach County, just so you have a choice. You know? And if we move along a different way, we're losing the choice. We're just becoming like everywhere else. I mean, one guy testifying for Minto says, I'm getting older, I'm glad I don't have to drive that far to get a package of milk. I mean, we drive by all these places that we need. You know, if there's something unusual that really would be frowned upon unless it was in horse country in Wellington, that you just wouldn't find it somewhere because there'd be no need or no drive, or, you know, that might be something that would be more interesting than the standard list that you might find in a textbook. And I'm wondering if the town wouldn't go to University of Florida, their real estate research group, and try to commission something about the amount of retail and commercial that is being proposed. I mean, inside what I call the cup, where we're surrounded by nature, land, and farm, which is us and the acreage, they're planting so much stuff. And you drive by, I view we have a slash and burn mentality. You know, as the older stuff, we abandon it and go to the fertile new ground, build something fresh and new. People leave, and then we keep moving to fresh and new stuff. Much like when you have the downward cycle in a real estate bust, where a commercial building becomes cheaper, they move out, and then this cycle of crash, very similar to that. You know, I mean, even with people buying online, I mean, you can't separate people from computers. I mean, they're buying stuff online, and the demand for retail is bound to be impacted at some point. But we're still, you know, we have older people on the county, you know, council, and, you know, we kind of joke around about, geez, your phone can do what, you know? I mean, at some point, us as decision makers are deciding based on, you know, stuff in the past. And I think it's going to bite us in the butt. Not to mention losing who we are. So I don't know, I think transfer development rights is one, and by the way, I think you guys are making fantastic turns around. I mean, if it were a sailboat, I'd be afraid of falling off. I mean.
Well, one of the things that, and it's kind of a sidebar, I guess, is if you look at the list of uses in the commercial zoning district, there are more uses that you normally see in cities or in the suburbs. And I was thinking specifically about the proposed ISB, individual small businesses. If we could identify pretty specifically the types of businesses that we would like to see located on those uses, more specifically related to the equestrian or the agricultural.
Do you want to know when I find it really something that's comparative. I know you don't like that mulching operation over there on Okeechobee, but it is such an agricultural use, and when we have made that contract with whatever that tipping company is that comes and picks up our yard,
Waste plant.
yeah, our yard trash, I mean, we don't have little yards, you know? I mean, we have large ag properties, and we don't have 3 refrigerators. And I understand there are commercial constraints in terms of how much money you spend for something like this. But if the town were to have their own trucks that pick it up, take it to the mulching operation, and have some kind of arrangement, I mean, in other words, you could internalize this agricultural cycle within your own entity and solve 2 different things within your own, you know, because we're trying to mulch as much as we can. We're trying to feed the cattle as much as, they won't eat everything. You know, and we're trying to compost, but palms don't compost. So we're trying to do whatever we can agriculturally. We're trying to learn all the best management stuff. And people are always visiting to say, you ought to do this. But I think within that framework, we can solve some of our own problems and do it agriculturally. And the town should be able to get a little bit of money. I know one of our council, Jerry, likes to have things where, you know, you can get some kind of income generation.
Yeah, well, there's been some interest, I should say, from some manure composting companies to kind of come and do something. I don't know.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and see all Indiana University. You can see all these, Nebraska, all these different places where this is not the incredible threat. But they show you just how to do it. They show you just how to prepare the ground and all that.
Yeah, well, let me bring it, I'm
That's
glad you
it.
got your 2
That's it.
cents, or more than 2 cents, but
Yeah.
but we really need to keep our discussions tonight, because we're under the gun here. We have to
The
get
mulching
something-
site is on Okeechobee. I
We
think it's
have
a
to
great
get this
thing. I
something
think
done.
it solves problems.
We have to get something done, so that the council has this, so that when we start the new year, we're gonna have some sort of rule. Now, we can always come back and do some fine tuning on this, but we have to give staff direction tonight, so that they can take something to the council, December 2nd. And
That
so,
means he's gotta work between now and tomorrow midnight. to get
Transfer
the-
development rights,
to Get it done.
I
internal
think
solutions.
so if we could start, Veronica,
Yeah, I have a real problem with being told that I have to get something back to the council. This is so important. I'm almost offended by that. This is so important. This is gonna be the future of our community. Okeechobee is right in the center of our town. And what we do there we're gonna have to live with for 100 years, probably more. And there are communities in northern Florida and rural areas who are facing what to do with their little downtown areas. And I think we need to get it right. Now, I also agree that we need to do it fairly quickly because we haven't done anything apparently for the last 18 months, I guess. I don't mean you guys, I mean, it's just,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
but I'm concerned about being told we gotta get something back to council. But I do recognize that we're gonna get other applications in pretty quickly, which I think is the reason we're concerned about this.
That's probably the only reason.
Do you have zoning in progress? Zoning in progress?
We had that discussion this afternoon at 5:30.
I'm having trouble.
We had the discussion on zoning in progress this afternoon at 5:30.
That would allow her the time.
It's not very strong apparently, because what we're doing here is really coming up with a significant plan that's going to restrict the next guy coming in, or the next woman coming in with, here's my site plan, and I need to get land use that does this, and you just gave it right there.
I think though that our last meeting, we had discussion about
Are you
this.
finished, Ron?
And
Well, I'm not, but I don't have any problem with,
because we asked, we knew it was coming and we know how important it was, and we did ask
And this
to
was.
please have at least one meeting that we could really hash it out before we voted to then send it on. We even asked if we had to meet special, another meeting on a different night, we were willing to do
I can
that,
only tell
so,
you it's my failure.
you know, it's a shame that this is something that would then have to turn around December 2nd. It's not fair to you, I don't think it's fair to us, or quite frankly, to the
I
community.
don't, if I may, Chair, I don't mind that we go ahead and get something done and schedule to bring it right back first meeting in January. I don't have an issue with that. And I think you should, because I do believe you're absolutely correct. This is the most critical aspect of the town.
but my concern is, let's say we decide, okay, in the interest of getting something in the book,
On the books,
we have to substantiate it. There has to be competent, substantial evidence of a change that we want to make. Otherwise, it's gonna get thrown out.
by whom?
Pardon?
By whom? Whom's
By
coming?
whoever we deny
The
in the
next person
future.
that comes in and says.
Right, and so, I think we need a lot, for example, you indicated that it's generally accepted that a certain amount of square foot, well, we need to back that up. I absolutely agree with you, but we need to have evidence on the record of that. And I think we have to give this some thoughtful consideration. And I'm concerned that if we just get something on the books in the interest of time, it's not gonna hold up. I
What is,
don't know.
what is stopping you from zoning in progress? Why can't you say, we're now,
We have a much stronger case if we have something that is before the council.
Yes, well, you do that. This is pretty specific, I think.
Well, this is before you, this is not before them.
ouch, I mean, what,
Well, but why couldn't this, even after we discuss and whatever we do, why couldn't we take this, send this to the council, and they declare zoning in progress as they consider it? And then we get another crack at it.
yeah.
I always envisioned you having another crack at it regardless of what happened. My concern was, and the concern that's been relayed to me, is that you want to get a lid on the pot before it boils. And that is probably my fault, because you guys should have been working on this 5 months ago. Not that you were gonna do anything until everything was settled, but you should have been able to get through to have all your data, have all your backup, have all your supporting evidentiary material, so that when the eventuality occurred, we have it, we think this is where we want to be. I am not gonna disagree.
Well, let me just toss my 2 cents in. If we could get some kind of consensus that we're going in the right direction here, maybe we need to change some FARs, add some definitions, get some more specific language. The way this is a large-scale land use plan amendment, which means if it goes to the council on December 2nd, that's for the transmittal hearing. And that transmittal hearing means we send it up to the state, and they will take their full 30 days to get their comments back to us. And then following that, we have up to 6 months to actually adopt the ordinance on second reading, and we can make substantial changes in between first and the transmittal hearing and final adoption.
Yes, well, what happens when somebody submits their application 2 weeks after it gets transmitted?
Well,
Then we have a case.
like Bill was saying, we have a much stronger case for zoning progress if we have gone through the transmittal hearing.
So you think once we get through a transmittal hearing is when we can put zoning in
Goodbye
progress?
time.
Is this
We
what,
can't put it through?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you
I've
can.
never heard of this. Is this what Cirillo said?
Well, that's,
Because I've always run it downtown and stuff, they just,
Yeah,
boop, flag of the, like,
that's right, you sit,
zoning in progress.
when we bring it, well, I mean, you can do it however you like, but if you bring it, if we sit down as a matter of discussion with the council, as a discussion item, and they decide, yep, this is the direction we wanna go in, zoning in progress, then it comes back to us and we sit down and really work it out. That works too, and then you don't have to worry about sending it up as a transmittal, and then there's pieces, parts everywhere, and I just don't think it's,
Once you
I
start
think
talking.
you did a great job, I just don't think it's ready.
Once you start talking in a public forum, the word just flies out, and before you know it, that's why I thought you had the right to call it quickly.
Yeah,
Then perhaps the thing for us to do is to look at this, look it over,
yeah,
get the general sense of it, make a recommendation to the council that they consider this along with zoning in progress. And to give us another, to refer it back to us so that we, with their general ideas and blessing, and then we continue working on it.
Can you try to explain transfer development rights, sending, receiving sites? Can you try to present that idea to them and explain it?
well, I can certainly,
I mean, for here, in this zone, as an option, I mean,
Yeah.
you could still have all this nice changes.
yeah, well, you can make, any kind of a motion you want to tonight, saying, okay, we agree with this in concept, but we'd like additional opportunity. We're recommending a zoning progress, and we're also recommending that ABC be incorporated in here.
because once you put this into place, then they get development rights, because right now they don't really have development rights.
Right.
But once you put this into place and they get development rights, you are suggesting to add the option that they could then sell it to
Sure.
someone on Southern
Sure.
Boulevard.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you'd end up with something that's much softer.
So should we go through with our comments?
Yeah, let's finish up with comments. We have one public comment here from Keith, so let's get,
I had one question that I think I have brought to you today, and hopefully you'll have an answer about it. My question was, I was concerned for two reasons on the maximum square footage. I thought it was a great idea. After you explained it to me, I think it was a great idea. I'm very concerned about how that works with property rights, of limiting, making it first in, first served. But in application, I'm real concerned that as soon as that gets out on the street, we're gonna be inundated with probably not very well thought out applications, and we'll be in a position where it'll be very difficult for us to deny them, and we will not have the quality of development that we want. That's in the application of that kind of a policy. But what's the answer, did you get an answer to my initial question?
Well, I did talk to some planners up at DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity. That's the new version of DCA. And I asked them if they had ever, in their experience, had a municipality impose a square footage cap in the commercial. And they said they had not. But they also said that they did not have anything against it. They thought that it could be defensible, although they've never worked on the case. And what they were, we talked a little bit, and I picked a few pieces out of what we're talking about. And if you look at the corridor now, it has extremely limited development potential. Okay, we are giving them additional development opportunities. Even if we set a cap on the square footage, they still have more opportunities through the cottage industry and the individual small business. If all 49,000 square feet is gone, they still have additional opportunities. So we are not taking any of their property rights, we're actually giving them additional opportunities.
Well, that sounds good.
I've got one suggestion, instead of sticking ourselves with FAR, as we discussed at the last council meeting, the county is considering going away to trips. So maybe if we get away from FAR, we can still use FARs obviously, but go on trip generation.
Yeah, well, I got something like that in here now. I'm saying individual small businesses, those businesses cannot generate more traffic than the number of trips that would qualify for insignificant impact on Okeechobee. Now, you may want to take that one step further and say, okay, give a certain number of trips based on that study that Lisa did, look at the uses and say, okay, these are the kind of uses we want. These are the trips, the average daily trips that they generate, and we are going to restrict those businesses to those that generate less than that number.
Think about this though, Jim, because you might be onto something. Because what you want to try to avoid is what happened on Southern Boulevard, like with that one person who came in and said, I want to rezone my property because it's a retirement piece and it's going to be worth more commercial than it is residential. That's why I want to rezone my property. You want to avoid that. So if you really want to get someone who is going to spend the time and really, not just rush in, and they actually have to do a trip generation,
Right.
and you say, okay, it's this, here's the cap. And they've got to generate a report based on the types of uses and the number of trips that development is going to generate. That's just one step higher than your average, I just want to rezone my property person. So that might be just another level of, if you really want to do this, you're going to have to put some skin in the game.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the idea of having that. So I don't know if that's an additional thing,
Yeah.
where maybe.
Well, I've got that in here now, that they have to do.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I mean for the activity center. In order for you to move forward, the activity center cannot generate more than, and whatever that trip generation is going to be. Because if the goal is to try to have those smaller mom and pop type businesses, and maybe a bank or some other kind of business that's going to be something that's going to be supported to the residents are going to be able to support. It's not going to be a big trip generator like some other big commercial type businesses. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something to look at, because that could be another one of those things that make the person who's coming in for an application more genuine, someone that's actually going to be moving forward, because they've got to now pay for that. It's not just going to be
Okay, so you're saying do something in addition to being found consistent with the county's TPS.
I'm talking about for the activity center.
Right.
Having some sort of language in there that provides, and I don't know what it is, I don't know what you were thinking, because I remember that the PowerPoint that you did for us, that was really good. Instead of having a FAR, they based it on number of trips. You don't want to generate more than X amount of trips per, whatever. But
There was a lot of monkeying around with that up in, for these developers
That's
to
true.
the north. I mean, really, and they do not combine their traffic studies. That is a first one in, and they don't, if you were studying it as a securities market or something, you would take in what's going on with your neighbors and what they're bringing to the market, You would be watching that and aggregating it. They don't do that. So that to me, from a research end, is scary. And I had the same question as she did on this first come, first served. And I didn't quite hear an answer. Is that 49,000 first come, first serve, and then it's depleted, or have you spread it out over each parcel?
No, it's essentially first come, first served, but I also have in here that number is to be reviewed.
And aggregated at these corners, which is why I can see
Well,
you can sort of see speculation predicting these
Yeah,
sort of
well,
things
we
in the
already-
marketplace.
we already have 30,000 of it committed.
Wow. Well, I don't know what the comment now would be from that.
Can I? Well, I have, you weren't able to get a hold of the attorney, I presume, about that.
I did, yeah,
See-
I did talk to him, and he was not aware of any specific problems with that, especially since a property owner that has an AR zoning now, he has certain rights. We're not taking any rights away from him. And we are giving him more opportunities to develop than he has now. One of those opportunities, the activity center may not be available, but he has two others.
Yes, but it's only available to certain owners within the district, and that's my concern. It does not apply fairly across the board. Now, if it's doable, that's fine. If it's defensible, I think it's a great idea. But I think we need to do a little more research on whether it's defensible, because it has ramifications to other owners in the same district, and do they have the same rights? And maybe that's not an issue, maybe it is. I just think we need to get a little more information. I had some concerns, I very much agree that we need to restrict the uses. And we need to define town serving, which is difficult, and we need to define neighborhood community. Some of the things you mentioned there, we've got to tighten up a little bit. I think we need a lot more backup on the market, how much square footage we're allowing, the 49,000 number, that magical number. We really got to nail that down with a lot of
Yeah,
good backup.
yeah. Yeah, I have information to do it, I haven't put it
Okay,
together.
all right. I'm concerned about an annual review. I think that lends no consistency to, I understand exactly why you want to do it, but to me, that's just saying, okay, when we use up the first 49,000 next year, we're gonna increase it to another 49,000. And the problem with that is, it's really dependent on who is on the council at the time, and I think we need more long-term consistency. So maybe if we look at it at 5 years or something like that, I would feel more comfortable with, because every year is just too easy, or else we require a 4-to-1 vote or a 5-to-0 vote on it, or something like that.
Okay, well, I also have in here, review it, when major road improvements on Okeechobee are included in the 5-year TIP, we could have that be the only time we have that, in here.
Well, now that we know we're going to 4-lane, my problem is, I would like to see us design the center of town to contemplate the widening to 4 lanes, whatever that looks like. I think we should design that now, so that we don't have to go back in the future and say, oh, well, now we got a wider road, what does that mean? Oh, we built this building too close to the street, and we did this wrong, and we did that wrong. I think we should have a more comprehensive approach to it. And we should know in advance. We've got the opportunity now. We got a clean slate. And if we know we're gonna go to a 4-lane or sometime in the future, let's design it so that it accommodates 4 lanes, and not say, well, once we go to 4 lanes, let's change everything we did.
Yeah, I would agree with you, except that I'm not sure that there's a consensus, an agreement that they want to go to 4 lanes.
Oh,
They're gonna be
that's,
sued anyway.
yeah, that's fine. But I think we should keep that in mind as we, I mean, if we didn't want to go to 4-lane, why can't we make everybody build right up the edge of the street? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Well, we'll know 5 years in advance, because it'll go on the TIP for probably 50 or out, you know.
yeah.
So, we'll have time to spend a lot of
I
time.
would rather though, I would rather look at it now and say, how can we design it so that it accommodates 2 lanes or it accommodates 4 lanes? Anyway.
So is that the second motion I understood?
not
I'm
even
serious.
think about it.
Obviously, I think that what I just heard is completely accurate and necessary, and I think everybody's on board. But that's slightly different than what's at hand and trying to either somehow we enforce, there's no building.
No, I mean, even if you're 4 lanes, those people driving through can notice maybe that we are ag-res or that we are
Royal Palm.
rural. Yeah, we're
Right.
not
Yeah.
Royal Palm Beach.
Exactly,
Or
yeah.
that we're rural, and maybe they enjoy their drive, and we'll never get out of our letter roads. But, you know, that's,
Right,
at least we can,
plan for it.
and you don't have
I
to,
like the roundabout.
you don't have to plan to capitulate in the future. You can plan to, and if she can come up with more ways to go long-term with it, I think good planning is the more long-term, the better. If you're actually planning for your children, if you can keep your vision and you can plan for your children, you're better off, I think.
Well, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into incorporating so that the county wouldn't make these land use decisions. But that requires us to have some pretty strong fortitude to be able to do that. And that's why, one of the reasons it kind of bothers me that we're turning around. I understand why we're doing it though. And I'm not sure exactly how to solve the 2 problems. What do we do with Okeechobee and how fast can we do it? I'm not sure how we marry those 2.
Can you make a motion so that you can get it to
I'm
the
not
council
sure.
and then kick it back to us?
Yeah, I haven't made one yet, which tells you that I'm having trouble trying to formulate one. I mean, if I could, I would like to say, this is a good start, we like the concepts, we think they need work, and we recommend it to the council, but only if they do zoning in progress. I have to tell you, if they don't do zoning in progress,
Exactly.
my response to this would be totally different.
A non-transmittal zoning in progress.
Protracted battle.
Zoning in progress on the day they consider this.
Right, but not a transmittal.
Don't wait, the day that it's December 2nd or whenever it is, I'd like to see them do zoning in progress. I'd like to.
How long do you think it would take to run through a plan for Okeechobee? A plan that you think everybody might like? I'm just curious.
Well, not
Well,
everyone
Or
will
just the
like
5 of us.
it. But the
We
ones
were
that
like-
people, not everybody is happy, to me, are the best
But
plans.
We know
When you're
there's,
talking
we know
about-
there's 2 opposing groups now.
Well, hold on.
Nothing and something.
When you're talking about a plan for Okeechobee is different from what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about commercial use or not.
Yeah.
Right.
You're talking about something
Well,
much bigger.
Well, I'm talking about, if we're
Yeah.
going to do commercial, what is the best way
I'm
Yeah.
okay with it.
to take
Yeah.
all of the land uses
Yeah,
and put them in some kind, it's not gonna be a marriage, but it's gonna be some kind of, cooperative venture that's going to be the best for the town. It is the center of the town. I really don't have a strong feelings as to what happens on Southern,
yeah.
but I do as to what happens in the middle. And I'd
So-
just like to see us,
Please include transfer development rights. I mean, there may be people who live there who say, geez, I'd like to get my money out, but I really do like the rural idea, that's why I came here, and I'd rather sell the development rights to someone in Southern. It worked really well in downtown West Palm until the city said, geez, I think these guys are making money, I want to cash in. And what they did is they flooded the market with certificates, and anyone who knows anything about selling paper knows that when there's a lot more paper thrown in, and that's exactly what happened, it crashed.
Did you have other comments?
Well, I do, but I'd like to hear from other people.
Grace, you have something?
I have a couple of things. There were 3 different options which, in my mind, added more commercial to Okeechobee Boulevard than I thought we were thinking we wanted. And I like the idea of having different options. I thought you did a really great job putting all of this information together. There was a lot of really useful things in here that put everything into perspective. So I appreciate all the time that you put into it, made it very helpful to me. The cottage industries thing just confused me a little bit, because I think that cottage industries is allowed anyway, now, under home occupation, based on the way that the state changed the cottage food law that it created. And that's why I asked that these go out to the board, because I wasn't sure what you meant by cottage industry. So I think I need clarification
Yeah.
of that.
Cottage industry is either a home occupation or a residential enterprise.
Okay,
Under our code.
right,
It's both of those combined. I just pulled cottage industry out
Okay.
of here to come up with an umbrella term for those two.
so what you're suggesting is what's different in the heart of Loxahatchee Groves as opposed to on the corridor
Yeah.
is that you want to be able to allow for employees and customers,
Yeah.
which, again, there were issues with that just because it changes the use of the property. You know, there are things that the property, which was constructed as residential, now becomes commercial. There are building code issues that need to be addressed, sprinkling of the buildings, handicap accessibility, and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not sure that that's something that we would want to address or go in that direction along Okeechobee Boulevard. I really like the idea of the small business enterprise, or is that how you said?
Individual small business.
Individual small business. I thought that was great. I really thought that was a really innovative idea, because it's not a home occupation, it is a commercial use. They have to go for land use, brings the tax base up. They would be building a commercial building, so the use that's gonna take place within the building is consistent with the building that it's in. I like the idea of having that accessory residential use there because it cuts down on the traffic. You know, it allows the property not to be vacant in the evening, the whole eyes on the street thing. So this I really liked. If there was a way, I'm not sure I'm loving the cottage industry thing. I'm struggling with that one as far as allowing those uses, allowing the residential to be commercial when actually it's supposed to be residential. I don't like that, never did. We had that whole big discussion, so I wouldn't really be in favor of that. Back to the activity center. I think there are things that really need to be added into the standards for the activity center to tighten it up a bit. I think you have to protect the RR5 on the side lot lines. So because if you're on a corner, let's say you're at D and Okeechobee, center of town, but the lot that's on the interior lot line, there should be a setback. Because you don't wanna have like a 5-foot landscape buffer or a 15-foot landscape buffer and then the residential. I think we need to look at that. If we're gonna put those types of standards in the comp plan. Generally, they're in the zoning code, but if we wanna put them like you have here in the comp plan, I think that's a good place to put it if that's the way you wanna go. I think we should be specific when we talk about the rural vista guidelines here, because we played around with that with the college, we played around with that with Bob Benz on, yeah, we're going to, but they're just guidelines. I think we really need to be specific. We wanna say that you have to put in public open space. You have to have a trail for pedestrian and horses. You have to, preserve native plants. I mean, I think here is where you wanna put specifics from the Royal Vista guidelines. Not just say that they're required, be specific as to what it is that we want. Because that's gonna deter those people who think they're gonna be wishy-washy about coming in. If it's in our comp plan, they're gonna have to do it. Did you say that 30,000 square feet is already approved, so what's left is 19? That's what would be left moving forward.
Yep.
Would it be, what if we did it as a limited time? Just limited, like for the next 12 months? Yeah,
Moderate, next 12 months.
limit the development. Like, what do they call that? Like a commercial incentive. For the next 12 months, if you come in, act now, you can do da-da-da-da-da-da. No, I'm just saying, as opposed to, under the policy 1.174, where it says a maximum of 49,000 square feet unless increased by the town council, I think that, unless increased by the town council, needs to be removed. Because you know how our town council is. They're very easily swayed. Oh, if I could just have 1,000 more square feet, I'll give you this tree. And I agree with Veronica, I don't think it should be reviewed every year. If you refer back to the way that you had it in one of the other definitions,
When Okeechobee's wide.
yeah.
Okay.
And then underneath the policies, for the individual small business shall comply, I think you should add in there the Royal Vista guidelines, because chances are they're going to be building a new building. And if you're going to add setbacks, that might be a place, again, generally you put that in your zoning code, but if you wanna put it in a comp plan, that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, the reason, you're absolutely right, the reason I put these in here now, was so that, we didn't have to wait to do code revisions
Yeah.
on the OLDC.
Mhm.
These would be in effect sooner.
Mm-hmm. But I would definitely add those same standards for the activity center to the ISB. On number 4, Jim, where it talks about the sunset, enact and enforce a sunset review procedure tied to the master plan, but the land use would still be in place.
Yeah, I know.
So that could be harmful to us in that, what if we get a really great site plan and then the next guy comes in?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I knew that was something that I needed to think about more.
Yeah.
Because if the master plan's invalid and the zoning and the land use are still there, is that gonna result in vacant commercial?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, I do have to think about that one for sure.
It's almost like we've got to load it so much in the front that only people who are serious are going to invest the money in moving forward. And they really have to be serious and not just, I want to change my land use just because I can. So the investment up front for those individuals really needs to be impactful to them.
Well, maybe then, maybe we could tie it to the activity center then. You get your land use and you get your zoning and they go in for an activity center with a master plan. And if they don't do it, come in for a site plan within a year, they lose the activity center status.
Is a church an activity center? What is it?
Well, it could be. It could be, but the limitation is solely on commercial space. An activity center could be in an industrial
Mega.
Institutional land use category and be a church. It could be under this, yes.
So,
But not part of the 49,000.
well, you have a lot of church interest, obviously, so it would fall under activity center to churches.
Well, I mean, you can come in just and ask for institutional zoning. But
So it'd be
the
institutional.
churches have to have, under our code, have to have institutional land use and zoning. None of them do now, because they were approved in the county.
So they come in institutional but follow some activity centers or guidelines.
But is that really,
I don't know if that would fall. in
Yeah.
that activity center.
that's a good question though. That,
You're never gonna have another church as big as the one on Eagle, right? Because now you have police because you have so many people going in and out.
We might.
You could, and that's not limited in size.
It's limited in size by the institutional. The way it is now, the maximum parcel in an institutional district is 5 acres, not the minimum, the maximum.
So what is that?
I just had one more thing.
They're on what, 15 acres there?
Yeah, now that's a dilemma that we're gonna have to face at some point.
The other question, or the other comment underneath the policy 1.17.3, says maximum parcel size 10 acres if a commercial low or commercial low office component is included. And what if it's not? I mean,
Well, that's, up in the front, when I defined, activity center,
Right.
I have a list of uses including, institutional,
right,
civic, recreational. So I'm saying that, if it does have commercial in it, it's gotta be, a maximum of 10 acres.
so even if there's a little bit of commercial, the maximum is 10. But if it's institutional, it could go as large as it wants.
That's the way, that's the way it's written right now.
No, I was just asking.
Yeah.
I was just asking. And then just like Veronica said, I think town-oriented commercial business, defining that, because right now we have like less, what do we have, 3,200? I think
Yeah.
3,200 people in the community, and
Yeah, we're filled up.
yeah, that's not, it's gonna be hard to support, for the community to support businesses.
Yeah.
So, the businesses are whoever comes in is going to be relying on people driving by to help support them. That's just the reality of things.
That's true.
So,
So you really don't need them.
no, you do
You only
need
need
them.
49,000 square feet of.
Yeah, that's right, you only need 49,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So, but if we could keep it to less, that would be okay too. I mean, if we have 30 now, chances are, like I said, if we've loaded so much in the front, people are not going to be running in to try to change it.
Can I ask a stupid question? I'm not a planner, but I've noticed, I was recently over on the west coast of Florida.
I never drove here, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was on the west coast of Florida, Fort Myers, and there's US 41. 4-lane, 6-lane, whatever, 4-lane. The one thing that they had that really bothered me, that I would hate to see happen anywhere else, there was no interconnectivity between lots on 41. So if you want to go to the guy next door, you go back out on 41, you go down, you go back out on 41, you go down. I've never seen anybody talk about interconnectivity, except when you guys brought it up the last time with the Day property and trying to get it going.
And then they had a drive-through right there. I mean,
But
it's
shouldn't
just,
that be like a major?
Well,
But it's a big plan.
Yeah.
Connectivity
put
is
their
in
ass into it.
It is.
mean,
I
it's
think-
really-
one of the things I am fearful about that interconnectivity along Okeechobee, if you put it in here, is I'm like what Veronica says, you know, Okeechobee is the heart of our community. And if we could just centralize just a little node of commercial somewhere, decide where that's going to be, put it and be done with it, plan it, put it and be done. You know, I don't think the smattering of like little, here, you got some commercial here, then you got some there, and then you got, I don't think that's how I, you know, see.
Can you build a town square?
I would love to see a town
Or
square.
a town circle even?
Or a circle, or a horseshoe, in the community. I would, you know, just love to see that. That would be an amazing thing to see in our community. I don't know if it will happen, but,
But in the meantime,
yeah,
do you wish not to do anything?
yeah.
Do you wish to do something? I think a longer term plan is very important. Probably more important than the action you're taking this evening.
Those are just my comments.
Well, I'm gonna, Keith's been sitting patiently, and we've all been sitting patiently. I'll hear from Keith, and then we'll bring it back to Rob, and for final comments and a motion.
Thank you, Keith Harris, 2580 C Road. I agree with Member Close that this is the time to take serious study and do it right with some in-depth planning. Monroe County, back in the 80s, facing the same thing, did a rate of growth ordinance that limited amount of square footage to be developed per year. Might be something of benefit here. Member Corning has mentioned TDRs, which also was used extensively in Monroe County back in the 80s and 90s. It worked very well to keep properties in a pristine condition of native plants, whatnot. It was more used for residential development than commercial. Rate of growth ordinance in Monroe County was so many square feet of commercial for so many houses built each year. Right now, Okeechobee's commercial is non-retail in nature. If you try to direct allowable commercial uses to be a non-retail method, such as right now we've got a arena fabricating operation going on F Road. It's in a zone, it's in the zoning of agricultural residential and is not properly zoned for it, but something like that matches the mulching operations. It's something that's a limited traffic interaction with road traffic on Okeechobee. Those are some things that could be of benefit. The TDRs will allow the property owners who bought the properties along Okeechobee 20, 30, 40 years ago who were looking for retirement to be able to benefit from selling TDRs to other properties and get monies that they had planned on to resell their property. Town Council has allowed properties on Okeechobee to be changed in ULDC and zoning for different uses. So just because someone wants to make another dollar off their property is not a reason to say no. There's a lot of things here that can be done, but this board, your board needs the time to do it, and Town Council should allow you to do it. You're basing some of your information from residents on workshops from 2 years ago. We've had the Minto development come through since then. Perhaps it might cause your residents to reevaluate what should occur on Okeechobee. So I commend y'all's deep thought here tonight, as it is a very sensitive issue for the future of our town. And I hope some of these ideas might be a benefit to you in your thinking. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Robin?
Did you have anything else?
There was only one thing. In downtown, we had an in-house attorney, and he came up with this, there was a statute that said you could discriminate based on profession. And it's what allowed us to build a multi-building arts district. And we were, when we had applications, we could say, you're a dancer, you're a musician, you're a painter or a sculptor, or whatever. We will take you for either the ground floor commercial, for galleries, or living upstairs. So that's a little wrinkle that probably a lot of people don't know about. And I don't know if that would be a benefit in use to help focus sort of an agricultural, rural style outcome. I mean, I don't know if you can craft something like that, like we crafted an arts district, you know, but we were able to control a certain number of buildings to make it so. I don't know if you can control it via planning, using such a thing like that. I don't know if it would help you.
We didn't hear from Robin.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, he passed to me.
I didn't.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple questions. And maybe this could wait, but, with the mixed use, would that allow, for residential in there with the mixed use?
Not at this point.
So it would be excluded?
Yeah.
What about like hotels?
Only uses that are allowed in the commercial zoning district could go in that, and I believe hotels are currently allowed in the CL district.
I saw it on the list here.
You know, so anything that's in the commercial zoning district could go in there, in addition to civic, recreational, cultural stuff.
Gotta look at those uses. Town supporting.
That's what I'm saying.
You gotta expand it, contract,
Yeah.
focus.
You have bed and breakfasts in the town, right? There are a couple bed and breakfasts that are big ones.
I believe there are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Veronica?
Well, I was just gonna say that I have a motion after you have a chance to give it how much you want.
Thank you. I think it's been an interesting discussion. I would like to see us put something in the council's hands so that we can at least put a finger in the hole in the dike, whether that's some specifics from Jim's presentation or zoning in progress or both. But I think the zoning in progress is going to be an essential key. Somebody may have to educate the town council on exactly how that works and why it will work.
How long can we be a zoning in progress?
I'm sorry?
How long can we be a zoning in progress?
12 months, right?
A year.
6 months is better, but 12 months is okay. Yeah.
12 months you can push?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Veronica?
All right. Let me read to you what I have in mind, and it started out as 2 motions, but maybe there's a way to incorporate it into one if it's acceptable to anybody. Recommend that the town council enact zoning in progress based on the proposal presented to allow the development of an overall plan to create what the community wants along the center of town, such as a town square. The plan should promote sustainability and maintain the character of the town using visioning, visuals, and workshops, and incorporating possible transportation changes. That's the first part of my motion. So basically, that motion says, recommend the town council enact zoning in progress based on this, but allowing us to go back and do a development, a good plan. All right, the second part of it is, and I'm not sure quite how to word this, but in lieu of that, recommend zoning in progress to allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to further refine the proposal, including but not limited to the concept of maximum square footage for commercial, the use of TDRs, more limited list or a more refined list of allowable commercial uses, refining the evaluation of allowable square footage to promote long-term consistency. Refining the time limits for evaluation of allowable square footage to promote long-term consistency and continuity. Expanding the definitions, development of visuals and models, exploring the concept of an activity center and further refining it. Modifying the sunset provisions. And that was intended to be including but not limited to that list of things.
I would move number 2, because that really makes them focus on the issues. It really lays out, here's the things you guys have to take a look. First, we need zoning and progress, call a flag into play. But then, guys, you think about these items.
I like that one better too, Veronica, because then that lets them know that we really were involved in this. Jim took a lot of time with this. We took a lot of time with this. We went through it. There were things that were good. There were things that still needed to work on. The first one seemed almost like we're starting over. And I think that scared me a little bit. And I definitely think it will scare them. The second one had more specifics. I think they'd be a little more comfortable knowing that we have specific tasks.
And I think we have the power, I think we have the power to change a kind of list like that we see here.
Yeah,
If we show people these lists, you're gonna get, this is the kind of stuff you could get anywhere.
And you could put activity center right there and create a whole new category.
You can create all kinds of new categories. So that's the motion, number 2?
No, I haven't made that motion.
Oh, I thought you
Just
I just
ask
read
me.
it to you, I just read it aloud, so
Oh.
that people would understand what I'm thinking of. I am uncomfortable moving directly to this proposal, because we're gonna lose our chance to develop a center of town that we're gonna be proud of for 100 years. I'm not sure we can get there with this. You're doing the best you can, but I'm not sure you can get there with this. But I would like, my personal feeling is, I would like to place it in the council's lap. They shouldn't be afraid of it. They should want to do it. I'm concerned that they would be afraid to do something like this, in the sense that somebody might come in with a proposal and they haven't plugged the hole. Yes, that I can appreciate, but to be afraid of looking into the future down the road as to something that we can be proud of, I would be sorry that they would be afraid of that.
Maybe afraid was not the right word. Maybe that is definitely not the right word. I want them to recognize that a lot of work was put into this, because it was by Jim and people, from the community, as well as the people who were sitting here. And yeah, there is 19,000 square feet of commercial based on this plan that could go somewhere. And it would be great if we could decide specifically where it's going to go. And I think that an overall Okeechobee corridor plan should be in place by now. I know Lawrence and I and everyone else has been talking about it for a long time.
Okay, then I have an idea. Why don't I start the motion with the specifics and end it by saying, in order to accomplish coming up with an overall plan to create what the community wants, et cetera, et cetera. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Move ahead, declare zoning in progress, so that we can have an opportunity to look at all these things and refine them, so that we arrive at X, Y, Z.
So I snapped up number 2 right away. I moved that.
But
That,
are you okay with adding
sure.
number
yeah.
1 to it?
Adding number 1 to it?
Yes.
No, well, let me rephrase it. Recommend.
Okay, get the recorder going so that we know.
I'm gonna have to listen to it at work because I'll never get all the words down.
At 9:28.
Recommend that the town council enact zoning in progress, to allow the planning and zoning commission board, to further refine the proposal, including but not limited to the concept of maximum square footage of commercial, allowable commercial, the use of TDRs, a more refined list of allowable commercial uses, refining the time allowed for evaluation of maximum square footage in order to promote long-term consistency and continuity, expanding the definitions, the development of visuals and models, exploring the concept of an activity center to further refine the concept, modifying the sunset provisions to allow the development of an overall plan that creates what the community wants along the center of town, which would promote sustainability, maintain the character, and incorporate possible transportation changes.
Did you say TDRs?
Is there
I
a
said
second?
TDRs.
Is there a second for that?
We're gonna use the TDRs. In essence, what I'm saying is, declare zoning in progress, let us look at this so that we can arrive at this goal.
Okay,
I second.
He seconded.
Oh, you did second it, okay.
Robin seconded. Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, I wanna keep, the town center, that was something that I was pretty fond of back at that Calvin
I thought
time
some-
period.
Yeah.
But it seemed that the people really wanted it right down on Southern. So figuring that was the way it was gonna go, and this was gonna stay more rural, and hoping to God that the powers that be would get control of the road. I guess that didn't
Well,
happen.
let me tell you, what I said was, in order to create what the community wants along the center of town.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that-
Yeah, it's suggestive, and I think
Okay.
it's useful. There's that fellow from Wellington who has the east side of B Road. I mean, that is a massive piece. And I had a University of Miami architecture guy overlay Savannah, the historic Savannah on it. And you can fit most of historic Savannah on that. And that's noted for its squares and its, and there is a potential to have a town that you'd be proud of if you wanted one. And it wouldn't impact the center of you would still have it down to the south where it seemed like the majority wanted it. I mean, I don't know if they could pitch it to them or not, I really have no idea.
You just meant
I'm just
centers
saying.
geographically.
Yes, I meant
Well, I
that
thought
it's
you meant
it's
the town.
physically the
No.
center
I
of
thought you
town.
meant a town that you could be, a town like center.
Well,
that you'd be
maybe we
proud of.
wanna talk about that, but
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not,
tonight.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not yet.
Tonight, she just meant as in the
Yeah,
middle,
okay.
the
Down
middle of
center
the
of town.
community.
Okay.
One question I have on TDRs is that you have to have a development right to transfer to somebody. Because if
Right.
you're sitting on a RR5,
Right,
your development right is one house on 5 acres,
right,
which you can't transfer.
right.
That's what it is.
Well, we gave people that, I mean, when you saw that land use map, there was no red where that billionaire from Wellington is building his megapolis. And there's no red on that map where Hoozawatchi's doing his sprawl with the
But if you-
drive-through college or whatever.
But if you
And
put,
that was all granted,
but if you put commercial land use in place along Okeechobee and allow for someone to then sell it,
Yeah, I
yeah,
understand that.
that's what we're
But if
saying.
you end up giving someone commercial who hasn't applied for it,
Exactly.
then, because no one's gonna apply for a commercial just so they can sell it. Now, maybe they will.
Yeah.
Maybe we can set up a process by which if you wanna make some money,
Well,
Then I
And not-
misunderstood.
I don't really
You
understand.
you would put a bonus, you would put a bonus factor in that if they sold the totality of it, they would get a little bonus kicker or something that would go down to some.
Let me just ask Jim a question.
Absolutely right.
On this, what you're going to present to town council will be what you have here.
Yes.
Where will the planning board's motion show up?
Oh, well, we have to do a staff report in addition to this, and that'll be in the staff report.
But they're not gonna-
I've got to tell folks, you know, when, a lot of you don't go to the town council meetings, I know Lawrence has been going, you know, and
I'll
I've
be
seen
there.
Grace there a couple times, but in all deference to the staff, is they present to
Yeah.
council, but they present to us.
Can we direct you to please prepare a letter transmitting our?
Well, I usually show up and tell them what to say.
Well, you haven't transmitted this document. You haven't sent this along, right?
I have-
But it's not as it was approved here. It was, isn't that, or
We're-
recommended? It was
We are
recommended.
giving advice.
Yeah,
This is staff's document.
yeah. But her advice was not to go with this, but was to go with another
Yep.
plan, right?
Well, no.
Well, no, I mean, this is a good basis, but
It
it's,
essentially was to work on this by adding those
yeah.
things into it. And in the meantime, a zoning in progress, so that there's no first reading of an ordinance.
So you're saying they would dump our motion and just run ahead with this?
They could, yeah.
Yeah,
could.
sure.
Well, you're gonna speak, aren't you?
I am, but yeah, I'm more than one voice if everybody shows up.
But they can always dump what we say, we don't.
Right,
But I
right.
still, I think I would like to get a little clarity about, because what I understood was a lot of work that you identified, various things. Is that work that you would recommend we bring in, I realize you're all professionals, that we bring in somebody to do the modeling and the design and everything that you identified, however many, 10 items? I don't
I
know.
think I missed it.
You missed two. Because part of, if you're gonna go, if I'm gonna go to the council, or Jim's gonna go to the council, it's gonna be, okay, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's the recommended action. Part of that recommended action is,
We need money.
there's 10 things
Mhm.
that we need, and it's not free.
It's yeah, and it's time to do some
Yeah.
of this kind of work. And form-based
So
planning
that's
has
all I'm
been
trying to
very
get.
successful in terms
Is
of
that what you were thinking?
people who don't respond to this, but are more visual.
And I know that the town has money.
Yes.
I'm just.
Yes.
I know.
Well, you'll-
I wouldn't, I don't have I mean, I think that's the way we should go. And perhaps is something along the line, if we're doing visuals and that kind of stuff, maybe Jim, you know, subcontracts for it and things like that. But it's so much better to plan when you see what it is the outcome's going to be, and when
I
you
like
see how it's
3D
laid out.
modeling.
And it's so much easier to communicate your vision
Mhm.
when you have those kind of visuals. So I'm not necessarily saying it has to go outside of our expertise, but that's, you know, I didn't really,
SketchUp makes it a little easier.
Well, I just saw, I heard of a whole list of items,
yeah.
which is a lot of time, a lot of your time, just reviewing it.
I just have one just one point of clarification. So is it your plan to take this to the board for them to vote on? Or are you taking it to the board and saying,
We're gonna take it to the board and say what you said.
as what type of agenda item? This is an FYI, this is what we did, or?
No, I'm trying to get activity out of them. I need action out of them, whether it's a zoning, we're gonna freeze the zoning, we're gonna put zoning in progress.
No, I know, but as, what type of
Some
agenda
activity.
item? That's what I'm trying to get out of you, is because my concern is that they're gonna throw their hands up and say, you know, we're gonna vote on this tonight. I would prefer if that was not an option for them.
I give them the recommended motion.
They can do anything they
I
want.
Recommended
know, I
action.
know.
I have to say, I don't think it's gonna be in their best interest.
No, it won't be in their best interest.
But I'd like to ask a question, and that is, what is you're saying that your recommendation is going to be what we recommended?
The recommended action is what you have.
Okay. Now, the
I
board.
mean, I can recommend this. What I recommend is take a look at this. Here's what, I have a new program in place. It's called an agenda item report. It's no more than 2 pages. The problem statement, problem solution, little background, current activity, if there's a financial impact, that's why I'm asking you, are these things, and a recommended action. The recommended action could be 2. The board says this,
I know, but
we
it,
brought this forward. You take
For
it.
instance, we did this once upon a time when I was on the dais, where we had proposals come in.
Right.
And Fresh Coast Planning Council, it was the one that I would have selected. But their proposal was right around, what is it?
150?
It was
Couldn't have been.
$50,000.
Yeah, Treasure Coast,
They did
Treasure Coast,
Yeah.
proposal, yeah, it was a very big number.
It was a very big number, and then we had another number that, well, I'll do it for, $1,000.
well,
But you're
there's
not
so
getting
many
much
people
for
out
that.
there now who do this kind of stuff. The Urban Land Institute can do a technical advisory panel for like 10 or 15,000.
Well, the problem that we run into, because I've been down this road so many times, is that we bring in outside experts and all they see is military trail and condos.
Yeah.
Now, this is Okeechobee in a rural
Yeah.
Well,
community.
I've done some things
And they're coming in
with-
with, well, we get you have 3 gas stations along this side and then a convenience store down here.
Not-
You get you Miami, they get it.
Yeah.
See, I didn't really contemplate, I mean, I would like to see that, but you're right, you have to be careful who you select. I would like to see that, but I didn't necessarily contemplate shipping the whole thing to somebody else, to be honest with you.
No,
I mean, you've made a good start.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that I find most helpful are visuals and conceptuals. And Jim, I don't know what your guys' capability is, but to me, that might be something that you could even sub out to somebody. And that might take some money, and studying this more thoroughly might take more of your money. I didn't necessarily see shipping that out to another consultant.
Well, the guy that we had in with our visioning weekends, I think we had 3. He came in from Gatesville. He had visuals up on the board. Everybody had a little
Oh, I remember.
push this button, push that button, if you liked it or not. And we actually ended up with some nice data. Maybe you can dig that out. It's gotta be around someplace. We don't throw stuff like that away. But I'm not sure we need that level of guy to come down and give us that much stuff. Because that's a visioning thing, not a what are we gonna get done today sort of thing. But I liked it.
Yeah, we gotta do, you may want, I'm thinking you really need to do the visioning thing again, only because the population has, the numbers I heard, a corporation was 1,700 population, you've doubled to 3,000. And you have this dichotomy of, don't put anything, okay, do something.
so, yeah,
And I think a vision, you guys have a vision, but there's a whole population that may have something else. That
Mhm.
I think it may be time to do that type of thing again.
Well, that's
in
why
all
the
due
model,
respect.
the modeling reaches this technical data, you need help sometimes to get through it, understand it. The modeling allows a broad amount of people to quickly visualize what you guys are thinking.
But I'm always in favor of the visioning process. I'm always in favor of
I
that.
think you need it right
because you
now.
never know who's out there.
Because you are at a crossroad,
Yeah.
and I've been chastised for it. You're at a crossroads. You need to protect what it is you want to protect, change what you want to change, but you've got to do something. You can't stand there, you're going to get run over.
Especially with everything that's happening around us,
Yes.
things are changing so quickly, and you blink your eye.
Well, the landowners on Okeechobee, what will Bill they want? They want as much money as they can get,
Exactly.
without, and then they're gonna move on.
And so.
And now that they're gonna be able to get a traffic report in 2 days. They're gonna be able to get a market study in 2 more days. And I can hire 10 people to do a market study that will tell me exactly what I wanna know. And they will be in here so fast, that's what I'm really concerned about.
That's why we gotta come up with
Yeah.
something
I could go,
loaded,
I could go.
up front.
I don't care if you come up with .001
Yeah,
as a recommendation.
I could show up in a Smokey the Bear outfit and say, if you don't pass zoning in progress, you're gonna have a forest fire down over at Show.
Would you?
Yeah,
Would you do that?
yeah, I would do that.
Well,
Promise?
we have a motion on the table that we haven't voted on yet.
Oh, we didn't?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, so now,
December 2nd.
December 2nd, as many of us that can get to
Well,
that meeting. would be
We
great.
were going to try to put the title of an ordinance on there. I don't know that we're going to be at liberty.
Please don't do that.
yes, that's right.
I can tell you there's a lot of pressure. I don't know where all the pressure's coming from.
You're getting pressure from this side too.
I understand. I have.
Wait till it starts moving south from Minto, you wanna hear about pressure.
This is the time to do what it is we want to do.
Perhaps we should be contacting the council people.
I'm sorry?
Perhaps we should be contacting the council people.
Yeah, because this would be,
Well, contact whoever appointed you, I'll certainly stick with Brownie, so whoever is that you appointed you.
do we have enough members, by the way,
Or what?
full-time, like,
Well,
I'm
that's what we
sorry.
have, that's what we have.
My peripheral vision is off today.
We're good.
We have
That's
four,
why we have
four
all-
regulars and
2 alternates.
2 alternates.
I thought-
Yes, I asked a question. The last two meetings, we've had the third Thursday rather than the second. And I would like to do that same thing again in December, which would mean the 18th, which, if that's okay. We had two site plan reviews, I think, that are going to be ready for that meeting, but not ready the week prior. And I'd like to get them taken care of in December.
It'll work for me, I'm not leaving for Christmas vacation until the weekend.
Okay, good.
That works for me.
Good, thank you.
You'll send out a notice about that.
Adjourned.
I'm going to see three of them, so. Yes.
Yeah, we're-
Real freak down